to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'd like to share my recent conversation with Laura Bordoni. Laura is a member of the Darden faculty, and she leads a course called Experiential Learning. This course is dedicated, credit-bearing time in the Executive MBA curriculum that gives students an opportunity to explore both their career and personal goals. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. As always, if this conversation was helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to the ExecMBA podcast so you never miss an update. Remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Laura Bordoni. Laura, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Brad. It's great to be back.
Well, it's great to have you here. I don't get to see you all the time. So when Laura Bordoni comes to Sands Family Grounds, it is really like a special occasion for me, a holiday of sorts.
Oh, well, thank you. It is. I'm always happy to be back. It feels like home to me.
So it is Q2.2. That is the second weekend residency in the second quarter for our first year Executive MBA students. What brings you to Roslyn today?
Yeah, I am here. It's a very busy time in the program for students. They're in the thick of those early core days. And I am here to give the students a preview of the experiential learning course that I teach. It doesn't kick off until the spring. But it's always helpful for our students to know what is coming and what's ahead. And so this morning, when they're in their homeroom where they, hear updates and all that good stuff, the career team will provide an update on the professional advancement course. And then I will give a very quick overview of experiential learning and leave it at, I'll see you again in March. So that's what brings me here. I'm excited this is the first time I'll meet this new cohort of students that I'll be working with for a year or so.
So how do you compress down like 6 credits worth of experiential learning into like a 10-minute presentation for people?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because I told the team that I needed 1 or 2 minutes, and I timed myself, and it's not 1 or 2 minutes. So not well is the answer. My goal today is to essentially let students know that they will have an opportunity to work on their goals, and we can talk more about it. And that it's not anything they need to worry about yet. I think sometimes our students hear of things coming and they're so busy already that it can feel a little bit nerve-wracking. And so my hope is to just assuage any concerns and let people know that this is a course that I hope will serve them very well.
Yeah, one of the things we talk about with Executive MBA prospective students is that there's dedicated time, credit-bearing activities in the program that allows them to kind of think about their career, their professional development. It's a total of 7.5 credits. So it starts with the professional advancement course in the January term between the fall and spring semester of their first year. Now, you don't have to take that class at that exact time. You could also choose to take it in your second year, although I will say most students will take it in that first year, J term. And it comes at a really nice time. I think you're a semester in, you've done 2 quarters of core. Now let's start thinking about what comes next and start developing that roadmap. So that kind of kicks things off. And then you come along, start in quarter 4, right, with experiential learning?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we kick off the course, and I'm happy to give a little bit of an overview if that's helpful. Experiential learning it's split into 2 parts. So the first half of EL, as we call it, kicks off in Q4, as you said, and it really runs alongside the sort of the background of folks' core classes for Q4, Q5, and Q6. And it is exactly as you mentioned, it's an opportunity to sort of carve out time to work on these other goals that you brought into the program, right? So many students, yes, you came to learn all the amazing content that Darden has, but you also probably came to make a career switch or to climb within your organization or maybe start a business, right? And it's really hard to make time for that type of work. And so experiential learning is an opportunity. It's really sort of a chart your own course, where you will set your goals up front. And then we are there to provide resources and support along the way. And we try to do it through this model of learning through experience, as the name says. So you're learning via your textbooks, you're learning through your case method. And there are certain things that you just really need to learn by going out and doing, right? So I need to see how this new resume that I just updated lands in the market. I need to practice these interview questions and see how that goes. Those are very tactical examples. Other examples that, are more tricky might be, I'm struggling with my boss. We're not jiving. I need to try something new, and I need to learn from that experience. I need to reflect on it and then kind of continue this cycle of learning from that process. And so we try to use this model of, okay, set some goals, go out and do some things that are within sort of what you want to be working on, reflect, learn from them, and then keep going. And so through EL 1 and 2 in the spring, we really focus that on professional goals. And so, as I mentioned, really any sort of goal you might set for yourself, we hope, we strive to have resources and support for you via live sessions. So we, might do a how to update your LinkedIn session. We might do a practicing telling your story session. And then there's activities, structured activities to help guide you. And you'll be doing individual work along the way as well. And then part two, EL 3 and 4 is sort of the part I love where it becomes much more open and you can even work on personal goals. We tend to see folks, feel more and more drawn to thinking about things like, well, how is my life feeling balanced across different areas or not? How am I taking care of myself right now? Am I doing what I need health wise? And so students are able to work on really any sort of goal. And that second half where we widen it open to personal or professional goals, we align with when electives kick off. We find that's when a lot of students are ready to really kind of chart their own course in terms of what they're spending their time on. And so for the fall, the second year fall, we run EL 3 and 4, and it's a self-directed experience. There's all sorts of other good stuff we add in. You have peer accountability, you have reflection papers, but at a very high level, the hope is you get practice learning from experience, and you have time to work on, what else brought you to this program.
And you made such a good point. I mean, when we talk with prospective students, right, they're invariably here to make some kind of transformation in their life and career. I think one of the things that's oftentimes maybe a misconception about executive MBA students is that, oh, they must all be sponsored by their companies or they must all be looking to climb within their existing organizations. We have a very small handful of people who are sponsored by their companies. Um, so small that I can remember who those people are. We also have some students who are looking to climb within their organization, but we have more often than not, a large balance of students in the class who are exploring different paths and trying to think about what's next for them. And certainly pursuing an MBA is about expanding opportunity, opening the aperture, as I say. And you have kind of the first year of the executive MBA program to think about what that might be for you. And there's this like discovery process that happens through the core curriculum, through meeting all these incredible people, and then you layer in these credit-bearing activities, PAC, the professional advancement course, which is led by the career team, and then experiential learning. So that by the time you get to that second year, if you're looking to make a transition, maybe you've kind of honed in on what you think it is that you like to do. Is that how you think about the sequence of things?
It is absolutely. Yeah, the hope is that this helps you, like you said, explore and uh, have the tools in place so that you're ready when you do get to that point where you say, okay, now I do want to look for a new job, or I do want to have that difficult conversation with my boss about promotion, or I'm ready to start my business. The hope is that whether you've taken advantage sort of during EL 1 and 2, or you come back to them, you have the tools and resources. You've been sort of forced more or less to think about these things, because what we find with a lot of students is it is so busy that if you don't carve out that time proactively to think about these other goals that brought you to the program, the time just goes by, right? And then all of a sudden you get to, towards the end of the fall of your second year and you're like, oh my gosh, I wanted to take advantage of all these things while I was at Darden and I haven't. And that's okay if that still ends up being your story. Darden is here for you even once you graduate, but ideally you're able to take advantage. And what is so interesting about, I think, PAC and experiential learning is I often see students start out and set one goal and it evolves quite a bit. So we have a lot of students who actually come in and saying, no, I don't think I'm a switcher, or I'm just exploring, and then end up in a very different place because, as you said, they connect with other folks. They, discover some piece of, some functional area that's really exciting to them. We have students who, over a conversation over lunch, ultimately decide to start a business together. There's so much that happens, when you're in an MBA program that you can't necessarily predict. And so we design experiential learning such that your goals can and honestly should evolve. The whole point is that you're kind of learning and growing. So I see a lot of students set out with one goal. And some of them, that's exactly where they end up. I need a new job. I want a new job. I'm going to take all of the tools to get that new job. I got the new job. Many others say, I'm really not sure, or, I think this is what I want to work on. And it changes over time. And so we hope to be able to sort of just meet students where they are throughout the whole journey.
Yeah, I love that. We obviously ask about students' career goals in the admissions process. And one of the things, maybe a subtle thing that we added to our career goal essay question a couple years ago is the sort of introductory phrase, at this time, how are you thinking about your career goals, short term and long term? To us, we wanted to signal that we don't expect this to be fixed. We actually expect it to evolve. It may not, but we just want you to know that we know there's a discovery aspect to the MBA. And a lot of times people, to your point, come in and say, I want to do this one thing, and then they come out doing something very different from that. And, you know, the, I've had a lot of conversations with students on the podcast, and one of the consistent themes when it comes to career goals and sort of professional outcomes is to have a goal, but hold it loosely, like not to be so anchored to it to preclude your consideration of other things. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. I find that it depends on the student, but some students will set a goal for themselves and then almost feel this pressure that they have to hold on to that, or this disappointment in themselves that it doesn't either feel right anymore, or they haven't made progress against that goal. And one of the things that I try to sort of instill in our students is, as long as you're kind of reflecting and thinking and processing, you're advancing your goal of developing professionally, right? And so, and it's okay for things to change. And but I think that is challenging for some people, who you come to an MBA program with a very particular reason, and it's a big investment, and so you feel you put a lot of weight on that goal. But I think the other beauty of being in the MBA program in general, but then also I think hopefully we've designed some of this into experiential learning, is this peer-to-peer influence. I find that students, the more they connect with their peers and they learn from what other people are doing, and they start to open up and become more vulnerable and honest with each other, they start to feel more comfortable with, oh, okay, I set out to do this. This other person took a risk and they did that thing. And that thing actually sounds much more exciting to me. Or, maybe I could make this transition. I didn't think that I could. And I was actually setting my goal a little too small, or man, this other person is really overwhelmed too. And we're both just going to agree that our goal is to just get through Q2. So we try to build in these opportunities for peer-to-peer interactions. In the first half of the course, it's a little bit more tactical, I guess, if you will, of, okay, you've practiced your story, or interviewing questions with yourself. Now practice them with classmates. In the second half of EL, when folks are really sort of gearing up to make some bigger changes, we actually have folks work as in an accountability group. So I ask them to find a couple of classmates who they feel comfortable with checking in every week and saying, okay, this is what I've set out to do. This is how it went. This is what I think I want to work on next week. So that you have, both that support, but also potentially that sort of that opportunity to open up to other possibilities, or let yourself off the hook a bit too.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we get all kinds of questions about the community in our professional degree programs, and one of the consistent messages, at least from us in admissions, is that this is a place where you can have that holistic MBA experience. Right? It's not a full time program. I mean, it's not just a full time student, but if you're looking to be part of a community, you want to be engaged, you want to get to know your classmates, you can find that experience here. That's very much what these programs are about: executive MBA, part time MBA. And so the other thing that I think about a lot when it comes to this kind of career thing is I always tell students to treat it like another class. Like, you bring that kind of accountability and intentionality to it. And the great thing is, well, you have class structure around this, right? And so I think you're right that school can get really busy. The career stuff can be a very easy thing to push off, but there's something about the sort of the cadence of PAC and then EL, and that it keeps people accountable, keeps people engaged, that keeps the ball at their foot, so to speak, to use a metaphor that our economics faculty member Peter DeBear will sometimes use about coursework. So
Absolutely. And we recognize, especially for the first half of EL where students are still in core, that it is a very busy time. And so I try to be very thoughtful about how much, we're asking of students to take on outside of their core work. So we're cognizant of that. And I think that you're right that one of the most consistent pieces of positive feedback I hear from students is it was so helpful to have accountability. I never would have worked on any of these goals, and I'm in such a different place because of it. Now, of course, some of that is, the students obviously kind of self-motivating, but I think having live sessions where it's like, okay, I'm going to show up, and even if I don't sit down and update my resume that day, I went to the session, I thought about it, it starts the process. And now I have a reflection paper due in 2 weeks where I have to talk about what did I do? What did I learn? And so I need to do something. And so even if it's just little by little incremental steps, because that's all you can make the time for, that's okay. But it is something. And I think at a minimum, it gets the wheels turning for a lot of students. One of the other big benefits, I think, of the course, obviously I'm very biased, is students have access to executive coaching throughout the course as well. And I bring that up because a lot of students, I say, look, if you have very little time, executive coaching is a really big bang for your buck because you get to have these incredibly valuable 1 hour sessions, and you'll walk away with some new insight about yourself and about your goals and about, where you're headed. And so, that can be such a worthwhile way to still feel like you're making progress and you're thinking about things without feeling too overloaded by them. And so we try to instill accountability, as you said, through live sessions, through these reflection papers, through, peer-to-peer accountability, working with coaches, a lot of different ways to strike the balance of very busy students, but students who want to make progress. And it's hard to do that on your own.
Yeah, you're very right. One of our former colleagues talked about the career process at Darden being a team sport, and I think what you just described is absolutely that. So, Laura, I'm curious. Like, you had many chapters in your professional life, right? You're an MBA grad yourself, worked in consulting, worked student affairs. Here you are now leading the experiential learning course. Like, how do you see this course fitting into what you love and what you're passionate about?
Oh, I appreciate that's a great question. You know, as you said, I spent most of my career in sort of the consulting and corporate environment. And time and again, I found myself more gravitated towards how is my team doing? How is this individual person connecting with the work, and but how that fits into their lives. And then I spent a lot of time in human capital consulting because I kept being drawn to this people component, right, of the work that I was doing. And I admittedly cared a lot more about that than, selling more hotel rooms or whatever it was in the moment. I did a good job on the ultimate bottom line goal, but I was very drawn to the people side of things. And so I felt that was really what was calling me to dedicate my time to more completely. And it was wonderful. I transitioned into higher education, and as you said, worked in sort of student affairs and on the administrative side, where I had my first taste of sort of more explicit student advising and coaching, and really enjoyed that piece of it. Um, but wanted to sort of try out this. I love the one-to-one, but I also really love the one-to-many approach, and wanted to see if there were opportunities to be in more of a combination teaching advising role, where I could be supporting larger groups and facilitating them kind of getting bringing out in each other and in themselves, what their goals are and how to make progress. And it's always sort of been most exciting to me to work with people who are in an inflection point. They're grappling with some big, hard questions, and I find that the MBA program is often that moment for folks. And so what I love about what I'm doing now, facilitating this course, is it's often a moment where you're raising these big questions, and a moment when you don't have time to be thinking about them. So to me, it's such a gift to try to give that time to folks. And to help. And then the other, the other piece I would say in terms of sort of my passion and what I love to do, there's sort of this people component, which I'm really excited to have gotten much closer to. And I also have become much more passionate about thinking about the whole person, and how our work fits in with our life. Having gone through, having a baby and having aging parents and having, major health issues on the home front, just it's changed my perspective on sort of being, I would say historically been more singularly focused on work, and now I feel passionate about thinking about how that fits in with my values and my health. And so I'm excited that there's some of that opportunity in experiential learning, that if folks want to think about those types of things, they can, and hopefully we can support them as they grapple with some of those questions.
Yeah, when I first came to Darden, I guess it was even during the process of like considering an offer. They gave me a chance to talk to a couple of current students in the executive MBA program. And I'm from a law background. I went to law school, worked in law school. So I didn't know that much about MBA students. And I was convinced, like, when I got these people on the phone, they're going to talk about finance and accounting and all this technical stuff that they had learned. No doubt that students at Darden learned those things. But when I asked them what they felt like they got out of the program, how the program had impacted them, both people, and this still impresses me to this day, talked about how much they grew as a person through the program, how much they understood themselves better. They knew who they were. They had a clearer sense of their value, what they can add. They had a clearer sense of their blind spots. They felt like they had become a better listener, a better partner, friend, a husband, wife, like all of these things. Like, yeah, this self work is maybe something people don't expect in an MBA program. And I would wonder, like, getting to work with students in this context of the experiential learning course, are you hearing some of those things too? Is that something that hits your radar?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always amazed by how many students and how quickly they start to think about some of those types of questions of their values, how they show up as a leader. And I think, more and more, maybe it's the world we live in where work and home don't have as much of a clear delineation for a variety of reasons anyway. I'm not sure what feeds into it, but our students are so thoughtful about it that a lot of times what I see is they start out with a goal that feels more tactical. Like, okay, I'm gonna do this 360 feedback assessment. That's one of the module students can do through EL, or I'm going to, you know, make a list of companies that I'm interested in for my job search. Great, very, very tactical. But I'm also doing executive coaching on the side because, it's helpful and why not? And very quickly, when you start to scratch beneath the surface of, well, what types of companies do I want to work for? Well, how intense do I want my work life to be? Well, I got this feedback from my boss, and that's interesting because it shows me, I'm doing really well at work, but gosh, I'm burnt out on the home front. And so it's very hard, I think, to really separate out these career goals from, these other questions of how am I showing up every day for my team, for my family, my friends, whoever it may be, and how do I feel? How am I showing up for myself? And so I'm always impressed that our students want to dive into that they're open minded. And I think coaching is the nice benefit, because that's very hard and it can be uncomfortable, right? And so it's nice to have someone else to kind of work through that with. And I see that in a peer-to-peer setting too, where students will sort of start to have some of those conversations. I absolutely have students where, it stays much more tactical, or they know exactly kind of where they are, and that's great. And I do see a lot of students thinking through some of those bigger questions of, yeah, who am I? How do I want to lead? How are my values aligned? And then therefore what implications does that have for the choices I make? So
Yeah, we really try to underscore with prospective students, this is not a transactional experience. It's designed to be
yeah.
transformational. And
Hmm.
to do that, it's got to be challenging. It's got to ask
Yep.
you these kind of questions and put you in spaces and give you support to engage with them. And I think experiential learning is a great, great space for that. I'm curious, obviously, you've been leading this course for a little while now.
Hmm.
Any updates to this year's iteration of experiential learning? Any new things you would want to highlight here for our listeners?
Sure. I think one, so this past year, the new component we added, I mentioned, was this opportunity to do a 360 feedback assessment. We're always trying to think about where are our students and what would be helpful to them. And so we want to be cognizant of not over indexing on just content for those who are career switching. As you said, it's often many of our students. But for those who are not there, we want to make sure we have really helpful content for them too. So we added this 360 feedback assessment. The career team executed it um, and brought in an outside expert as well. And I think that was really valuable for the students who took the time. Again, it was just a forcing mechanism to get feedback. And because it wasn't done within a company, I had students who asked classmates for feedback, who asked, family members. Like it really was sort of wide open, which was nice. So that was an interesting one. And I think that coupled really nicely with some of the other work students were doing and kind of reflecting on themselves. This coming year, we are bringing back some content that we had offered in the past around networking. So networking, is so inherent in job searching, in really even in climbing. And it seems like one of those things that doesn't necessarily require its own its own content. It seems more straightforward than that. And what we found is that, we have some folks who, for example, have been in the military their whole career and now are looking to branch out of the military. And that's a very different, ball game when you're thinking about, well, how do I network with people in all these different companies? How does this dynamic work? And, or we have folks who think that they might want a job change, but they're not really sure yet. And so networking is such a good place to start of like, well, I want to explore. The best thing to do is to talk to a whole ton of people. So we're bringing back a module is how we sort of organize our content that is around like how to network, how to think about networking, how to send an email that gets a good response. So everything from tactical to sort of, bigger picture. And then students will have the opportunity to learn from the career team for the kind of tips and tricks, but then also use the module to hold yourself accountable. Say, okay, I'm going to set a goal of I'm going to send 5 networking emails a week for the next 3 weeks. I'm going to see how it goes. I'm going to share my plan with my peer so that they know and they can hold me accountable. And then I'm ultimately going to reflect in a reflection paper I'll submit to Laura on what I learned from my networking conversations, how it made me feel, how it changes my goals. So we're bringing that back, which I'm excited about. That's one of the bigger changes. And then we'll see. We'll kind of continue with a lot of the other content that I think has been working well over the years. Yeah.
Well, the networking piece is so important. We always tell students when you're thinking about any kind of career exploration process, really the first place to start is by having conversations. And, I think people sometimes are at a loss of how to approach those conversations. They're not quite sure. I mean, it's really just about being curious about people, right? And thinking about, okay, what is it that you do? Tell me about what it's like to work there. You like the company, you like the role. What advice might you have for somebody who's curious about a similar kind of role, maybe curious about your company? Is there anybody else I should speak with? I mean, these are like 15, 20-minute conversations, but I think really critical for people who are looking to make a transition because I'm always struck by the number of prospective students who immediately go to like more of a structured recruiting process. Like they think about that kind of thing. And it's, of course, because that's what people know when you think about school. But the reality for professional degree students, and even to some extent for full-time MBA students, but particularly for professional degree students, is like networking is a huge part of this process, right? You're going to be developing relationships. You're going to be exploring different paths. Those conversations are going to allow you to hypothesis test, figure out like what you want to do. Is this thing what you thought it is? Is it different? And so through that, you're going to iterate and land on, I think it's this kind of role at this particular company or these particular companies. So that when you get to the point of applying, you've built all these relationships that you can leverage as you apply. And these people can advocate for you. They can put a word in for you. They can connect you with a hiring manager, all this stuff that helps basically help you get known beyond your resume and cover letter, which I know that sounds very old fashioned, but it's how you figure out what you want to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's right. I think a lot of students hear networking and they think, oh gosh, that's me calling people trying to ask them for a job. Right. And I don't want to do that. I'm uncomfortable with it. It's not natural. It's not me. And it's so it's so much more than that, or not even really that. It is, like you said, it is the best way to really narrow down what's interesting to you, what's exciting to you. And then yes, I think ultimately um, it is often the way that you will get a job. I mean, so many of our students have stories about, oh my gosh, I just, I happened to have lunch with this person and then they connected me with this other person. And but it can feel much more organic and informative. And I think some students might roll their eyes at this, but I think it can be fun if you look at it as, I just get to go out and meet a ton of people and learn from them. And often our students networking starts within the Darden alumni network, where people take your call. People are excited to be helpful, and it doesn't have to feel, you know, transactional. It's just a really nice way to meet more people, and I think it can unfold and be tremendously helpful. So I think that's right. So our hope is to demystify and make it a little bit more approachable for folks who are trying to kind of narrow and explore, and yeah.
Yeah, I think you made such a good point about it, not being transactional. There's an organic aspect to this, right? One conversation leading to another, like a snowball rolling down a hill is kind of how I think about it. Because you probably I always share this statistic with people, because it helps give them, like, a sort of framework for this. This is not, like, just 3 or 5 conversations, for people who are looking to make a transition, it's probably closer to, like, 50 or 60 conversations over an extended period of time because, again, you're really trying to get to a point, like, there's a self-discovery aspect of this, like, you testing, like, what you think you wanna do, but there's also discovery about roles and companies, and like there can be a bit of a delta between what you think something is and what you the reality of it is on many fronts. And so like the conversations help you not only figure out what you want to do, but really equip you when you start applying to really know like why you're excited about the role, what's attracted to you about it, what's attracted to you about this company. You have so much more to talk about, but you have to get yourself informed basically, and the networking is a big part of this. But you got all kinds of support, experiential learning, the career team, the alumni network, your classmates, all kinds of great resources to leverage.
Yeah, that's right, Brad. I think our hope is that we can make the process seem a little bit less daunting. And I think to your point that not only do you then are you better equipped once you do get to the point of applying, but so many jobs today, you feel like you just submit your application into the ether, right? And you never hear anything. And I think that's the other value of networking is if you find a company you love and you've talked to a handful of people, then it's easy to say, "Hey, I'm dropping my resume for this position. Do you mind passing it along?" Or you hear, hey, we're going to be opening up this role. It's not posted yet. So it really does also open doors. So it's hugely valuable not only to kind of inform what you want to do to help you prepare, but then also to get your foot in the door. But like you said, our hope is that you feel like there's a lot of different support along the way. And we've certainly, I think, seen some good success stories on that front over the years as well. So we just try to be as helpful as we can, and but the students are all so incredible, um, and they bring such amazing experience to the process as well.
Well, Laura, it's always so much fun to talk with you about the experiential learning course. And I think from an admission standpoint, we really, really love highlighting it because it's a great example of the program carving out space and time for students to really think about where they are, where they'd like to go, who they are, and who they'd like to be, right? All of these kinds of things. And so 7.5 credits, if you count PAC as part of it, like, and this roughly kind of 60 credit program. So it says something, right? It says schools speak about their values in terms of how they design these kinds of programs. I think it says a lot about, what's important here at Darden, right? This is a whole person kind of program. So I'm curious, do you have any final thoughts or words of advice for students?
Oh gosh. Well, if I was a prospective student, I might say, don't worry about anything until you just show up. No, that's probably not what I'm supposed to say. Take a vacation before you get here. I think that's probably what I said last time. I think I'm joking, but because I do think that the time goes very quickly when you start your MBA. And so I do think that it's helpful to come in, as you said, Brett, not with a perfectly defined plan, but some sense of, you know what, okay, I know it's going to be busy this fall. Here's one small goal I'm going to set for myself coming into this program. I am going to make sure that I, connect with three new classmates at every meal that I have. Or I know that I'm really curious about this one area. So I'm going to talk to as many folks as I can about this. Or, come in with some sort of small goal that might adapt over time, but you have a little bit of sense of what you might hope to get out of it, at least the first couple months, because it will fly by. Um, and so keeping track of that, I think, is helpful. And also know that you know it's okay if it's just really busy and you pick your head up in January, and that's when pack starts, and you can think about your goals then. So I guess that would be my piece of advice: of have one small goal that you have just tucked away in the back of your mind. um, but then absolutely just make the most of getting to know your classmates. As we've talked about, networking is everything. And so I always tell students, um, you know these are the folks who you're going to call in 10 years when either you want to start a company or you are interested in making some big change. And you'll be amazed and surprised by how helpful the network is and who in the network ends up being helpful. I mean, all of my job transitions post business school have been through that network, really. So I think just keep that in mind when you start out, to just enjoy it and take advantage of connecting with folks.
Yeah, we tell students all the time, we do a lot of admitted student programming where we give students a chance to meet their classmates and also connect with students across program. A lot of our events in the summer are actually open to executive MBA and part-time MBA students, all incoming students for these programs. And it's nice to build the biggest network you can, right? And to start
Hmm.
start doing that work even before you show up, because sometimes things get really busy with school and you may not necessarily feel quite like you have quite as much bandwidth as you do in the summer prior to the start of school. So we tell people, as soon as you know you're coming to Darden, start coming to these kinds of events, and you will find that first day of school won't really feel like a first day of school. It'll feel like
That's right.
just running into people you've been hanging out with for the past few months.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're a prospective student and you're still thinking about what program might be the right one for you, all the more reason to meet folks, when it's possible, or to attend events and listen in on things as well, to get a sense for that network at each school, and how it feels, and what it's like, and how big a focus it is or not. I think that's really important, for folks who are still figuring out, where they want to head.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for taking some time out of your morning for us. It's snowy here in Washington, D.C. Brave the elements to be on this podcast. So thank you for doing this. Always great chatting with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Brad. Appreciate it.
And that was my conversation with Laura Bordoni, a member of the Darden faculty and leader of the Experiential Learning course in our Executive MBA program. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA at darden.virginia.edu. Till next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.